Hello everyone, it's Logan again here to rank some more albums. Since my last project ranking 56, 57 albums, I don't remember, I've since listened to about 50 more from 10 other artists. So now I have 20 full artists worth of discography in my catalog, and I'm going to be ranking all 105 albums and 6 EPs that I've listened to throughout this entire experience. You might be wondering, Logan, didn't you already talk about half of the albums you're about to talk about now? Well, you're right, but a lot of the rankings have changed since then, and I think there's a lot of fresh stuff to say about a lot of them. The artists that I've listened to thus far, including the first 10, are The Strokes, Rare Americans, Kids See Ghosts, Arctic Monkeys, Cage the Elephant, Kanye West, Linkin Park, Rustage, Of Monsters and Men, Coldplay, The Fray, The Voidz, Post Malone, Radiohead, Dua Lipa, Frost, The Killers, Paramore, James Paget, and finally Frank Ocean. I will also say that I only listen to the albums and EPs available on Spotify as of mid 2024. Any albums or EPs not listed under the artist page on Spotify were not listened to. I've listened to each of these albums twice to give it a thorough opinion, and I ranked all of them worst to best. Without further ado, let's get into the EPs. I'll also add that I'm going to be kind of speeding through a lot of this as I don't want this video to run way too long, so it's going to be a lot shorter this time, a lot more quick, rapid-fire rankings for each album and EP. Without further ado, number 6. It is still Rare Americans' 2022 project, Songs That Don't Belong. Once again, a lot of the songs on here just don't work, and it's very clear that they should have stayed as B-sides, and I'm glad they did that. But there's just not a lot of memorable content here, and the stuff that is memorable in a bad way. Songs like Tremendous still are not good. Coming in 5th is Kaleidoscope EP from Coldplay in 2017. This is aged a bit better on me since my last time talking about it back in December, but still a lot of it's overproduced, a lot of it's really flat and soulless. I still like Aliens. Some of the other songs are okay looking back on them, but it's still kind of a meh listen. Number 4 is the only EP that's introduced with this next set of 10 artists, and that's the Others EP by Frost. It's very experimental, which I like, and I like the ambition that this project had. That being said, it's a bit all over the place, and there's not really any songs that are exceptional. There's a lot of pretty good songs on here. I like Eat, I like Fathom, I like Fathers, but overall it kind of is a bit messy and probably could have been tied together a bit more tightly. Number 3, the Future Present Past EP from The Strokes in 2016. I still like this EP, but it's still very divisive in the fact that it has the 2 great songs, 2 bad songs. Thread of Joy and Oblivious are still incredible songs and really boost this little project here, but Drag Queen is still kind of hit or miss, and then the Moretti remix is still not very good. It's close between this one and Others, but I decided to give it to this one overall just because it has some of the better songs, in my opinion. Coming in 2nd is The Blue Room, which is the 1999 Coldplay project. I like The Blue Room a lot. It's grown on me more and more. Obviously, Don't Panic's great. I love High Speed. Bigger Stronger is really fun. Such a Rush. I mean, really all of them on here are good. My least favorite's probably See You Soon, but even that one's still okay. Overall, it's just a fun little project. Sounds a lot like Parachutes. If you like Parachutes, you'll like this project. I'd give it a listen. And the best EP, predictably, is still Prospects March, which is also Coldplay, and it came out in 2008. Once again, it's very Viva La Vida-esque. A lot of the tracks on here are from Viva La Vida, but changed in some way, and a lot of the new tracks still sound like something off that record. It's all good. It's a good enough EP. It's still not great. I haven't listened to any EPs that I'm crazy about, but this one's good. It's the best, and it's a pretty clear front runner for me. Without further ado, now that we're done with the EPs, let's get into all 105 albums. I'm very excited for this. I hope you are too. Let's get to number 105. Number 105 was kind of a tough choice this time around because there's kind of two mindsets here. There's stuff that's actively bad and stuff that's boring, and I have to weigh which one is worse. And I decided to go with actively bad here. Number 105, Searching for Strawberries by Rare Americans. Still getting last place. It just only ages worse and worse as time goes on. A lot of the lyrics here are not good. A lot of James Priestner's vocal deliveries are not good. Some of the tracks on here are just really conceptually flawed, and I can't look past how much this album does wrong, especially with such an interesting concept. There is a world where this album's done correctly, and it's a good album, but I feel like they took the wrong turn 90% of the time here. So I kind of gotta put it in last. Number 104, Return to Olympus by James Paget. You'll see why I didn't want to put boring over bad, because this album is very boring. But there's not really much to say about it. It's not really an interesting last place material type thing. It's just kind of boring. Lilac Fair's kind of an interesting track, but I mean, a lot of this drags on, and it's not over 2 hours long, but it's nearly 2 hours long, and it just really is a bummer to listen to. It's just not very interesting. This was James Paget's most recent project, and by this point I was getting a little tired of James Paget, so maybe that has something to do with it, but it just was a lot of flat instrumentals, because James Paget's an instrumental artist. A lot of it felt flat and soulless, and not really like it was a cohesive album, but just a collection of copyright-free tracks. I don't know. It just felt a little vapid. And number 103 is The Wonder of Gaia, also James Paget, from 2019. Same thing with Return to Olympus. This one's about 20-30 minutes shorter, and it has a couple of better tracks, but once again, it's just kind of boring to get through. And then following that up at number 102 is Believe, also by James Paget, 2015. Once again, this one's shorter, and shorter here is good because it drags on. There is better tracks on this one as well. I do like the track Throw Off the Bowlines a lot. I think that's a great instrumental track. It's one of the tracks I knew of James Paget before the listen through, and that's one of the reasons I want to listen to him, because I like some of these tracks, but a lot of his tracks that I hadn't heard just did not live up to the ones that I had, which is a little disappointing. So yeah, that's going to go here. Number 101, just missing out on the top 100, is Stoney by Post Malone. This album's full of a lot of tracks that are immemorable, kind of boring, kind of vapid. I mean, it has its moments, and that's going to boost it above a bunch of these more boring James Paget albums, but still, I take away almost nothing from this. And I think it says something when I think the deluxe version really makes this album what it is. If we're including the deluxe, which is an additional 4 tracks, out of the top 5 tracks on this album, 3 of them are on the deluxe, which is kind of nuts. Number 100, Music of the Spheres by Coldplay. This is their 2021 project. Still has a lot of the same issues I highlighted in my last video. I mean, some of the choices here, like the emojis and stuff, were just strange. A lot of the music here is kind of, once again, soulless. I still don't like Beautiful. I don't like the chipmunk vocals. Really, this album had potential, but this is another example of Coldplay just doing something actively bad. I don't know why. They've made good albums in the past. I don't know why they're falling into a lot of these mistakes that I feel like they shouldn't be making by now. That's a lot of the reason why they're down here. It's because it's Coldplay. They should be able to make a better record than this, and this record's just really, really bad. Number 99, Atlantic by Rustage. This album's only aged worse for me. The lyrics are getting worse for me. The production's getting worse. Rustage's voice is kind of getting to me a little bit. And just a lot of the tracks that I thought were memorable are getting even worse now. And even the tracks I liked, still getting a little worse. Just not great production, which is excusable, but the lyrical content here is a little whatever. It's so-so, and there's just not a lot of tracks on here that really do much for me. Number 98, Rubicon by James Paget. It's the final James Paget album, and it's a bit better than the other ones for a couple of reasons. The first one being that it's the shortest James Paget album, which does matter here. The second one being that it has the track The Hero Within, which is my favorite James Paget song, and I think that track's genuinely really good and really boosts this album. And the third reason is just the consistency on the songs on here. It's just the tracks on here are much better, even if they're still not the most enticing, the most great, but they're better. I can't argue against that. So it's going to go here. Not much else to say. Number 97, Austin by Post Malone. This is another Post Malone record that I find a lot of the stuff on here to be pretty forgettable. What makes it better than Stoney, though, is that I like the new direction. A lot of it sounds nice, and the tracks on here that work much better. I like Don't Understand. I like Sign Me Up a lot. I think Speedometer is really fun. And there's a couple of other tracks littered in here that have some fun to it. But outside of that, there's just a lot of tracks that are still forgettable for me, and it's not really my type of record. In 96, Battleborn by The Killers. This is their 2012 project. It is kind of in the height of The Killers' bad era, so to speak. A lot of the tracks on here, once again, forgettable. And that's going to be a word I throw out a lot with these lower albums, I feel like. And there's a lot of annoying lyrics on here. I don't know what Brandon Flowers was doing on some of these records, but some of the lyrics are just a little strange. That being said, there's stuff on here that works. There's a couple of good tracks and a couple of really good tracks. I like Deadlines and Commitments a good amount. The title track is really good, but once again, it just doesn't really add up to a very good album as a whole. Coming in 95, Milo Xyloto by Coldplay. This is their 2011 project. It has a lot of the same issues that the Kaleidoscope EP had, very overproduced still. It actually has a more promising start than I remember with some of those opening tracks like Hurts Like Heaven, Paradise, and Charlie Brown, which are all pretty good, pretty okay. But once you get to like MMIX and later, it really takes a hit and is just track after track of really overproduced, sometimes forgettable, sometimes just bad pop music. It's such a weird, strange left turn from Viva La Vida that I just don't understand it. Coming in 94 is The Car, which is the 2022 project from Arctic Monkeys. I still think Mirror Ball is a great song, and I love that song a lot. But once again, the rest of this record is still a little boring and kind of like knockoff Mirror Ball. That's really all I have to say about it. A little boring. Sometimes it gets a little bit of the magic that Mirror Ball had in songs like Big Ideas, the title track, Body Paint. But once again, it's still a little boring. Number 93 is Overflow by Rustage. This is 2017. 2021. Yeah, a lot of the same issues present in Atlantic, except this album is very much a step above the last. The production is much better. The lyrics are sometimes better. And Rustage's voice is okay, but a lot of the features on here feel a lot more solid, and like they belong on the tracks. Still only an okay record. It's not my least favorite thing, but there's a decent amount of tracks on here that are pretty decent. I can't argue against it. I enjoy listening to this album if I'm in a certain mood. Coming in number 92 is Donda by Kanye West. This is Kanye's 2021 project. This one rose up a bit in the ranks, and my opinion on it's getting much better as more and more tracks kind of come to me and kind of start making sense, start kind of latching on to me. But once again, I still think this album is extremely bloated, and there's a lot of tracks on here that we could have went without. But it is getting better, and who knows, maybe one day it'll rise up more and more, and we'll see. Number 91, Wonderful, Wonderful by The Killers. This is their 2017 project. This is just a similar thing to Battleborn. A couple of good tracks on here, but a lot of this is forgettable, and there's occasionally very questionable lyrics. I hate the song The Man. I don't know why that's the most popular song on this album. That song just sucks. I think a lot of the better songs on here is when Brandon Flowers and the rest of the band leans more into the sort of religious tones, such as on the tracks Wonderful, Wonderful, and The Calling. I wish they did that more, but instead they keep doing, other stuff that doesn't work. So it makes it kind of a mediocre listen. Coming in number 90, 12 Karat Toothache by Post Malone. This is his 2022 project. has a lot of the same issues as the other Post Malone projects I've talked about previous, except this one has a lot more memorable tracks, a lot more tracks that I can really latch onto, and it makes for an enjoyable listen. I mean, there's just more tracks on here that work. My favorite's Lemon Tree, just because it does something unique, and I think that's good. But even not counting that, there's just a lot more here that I remember, which I can't say about Austin or Stoney. Coming in 89 is Day and Age by The Killers. This is their 2008 project. Not to be mixed up with Day and Age by Frost, that's coming later. Once again, a lot of the same Killers issues, a lot of boring tracks, some questionable lyrics. This one's just slightly better because it has more tracks that are memorable and stick with me, I guess. I like I Can't Stay. A lot of the singles on here are kind of meh. I don't like Human that much. I don't like, is it Spaceman? I think it's called Spaceman. I'm not a great fan of that track. But overall, they're still just much better here. Good Night Travel Well is good enough. Coming in 88 is Pablo Honey, which is Radiohead's 1993 record. It definitely doesn't hold up with the rest of their discography, and isn't even just as an album, it doesn't hold up super great. There's some pretty great tracks on here that kind of foreshadow Radiohead's discography going forward, such as Blowout, such as You. Creep, although being a bit overplayed, I think is still a pretty good track. But a lot of the tracks in the middle here don't really stand up. I don't like Lurgy. I don't like Prove Yourself. I don't like a good amount of the stuff in the middle. It just kind of fades into this weird, like, 90s rock, corny sort of thing. And so, really, when I look back on this record, I really am only looking back on 3 tracks, and that's You, Creep, and Blowout. Coming in 87, Jesus is King by Kanye West. This is 2019. This one has also grown on me a lot, although I still think it's so-so. A lot of the tracks just stick with me more. Some more fun production choices that I notice. Follow God's still my favorite here, but Jesus Gospel is also really good. And there's just more fun in this album than I remember. Still only okay. There's still moments that are like Closed on Sunday, but I can deal with it. It's a passable record for me. 86 is One More Light, which is 2017. It's Linkin Park. Once again, I think I like this album a bit more than most people. A lot of the pop production here is still pretty corny, still can be really annoying, like on Battle Symphony and other tracks like it, but overall, I'm honestly kind of a fan of a lot of the tracks on here, and it's only growing on me. I mean, I still like One More Light, I still like Sharp Edges, Heavy's pretty okay, Nobody Can Save Me is pretty okay, and a lot of the tracks that people just hate on here, I don't hate, I just mildly dislike. There's not a lot to really hate here for me, and so it's fine. It's an okay record. Coming in 85th is Thank You Happy Birthday by Cage the Elephant. This is their 2011 project. Still pretty inconsistent in my book. A lot of tracks on here that don't work, like Indie Kids and Sell Yourself and Doctor, 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 but there's still tracks on here that do work, like Always Something or Shake Me Down. So not much to say that I haven't said before. Grown on me a little. Some tracks are popping out that I didn't quite recognize before, like 2024. It's a fine indie rock record, but it's not my favorite. In 84 is Hollywood's Bleeding by Post Malone. This was originally my favorite Post Malone record, but it's grown a bit under the one that I haven't talked about yet. Just because there's a lot of more tracks on here that I don't really care for. A lot of the back half, I mean, is just not great. I do like a good amount of tracks here, a good bit though. A lot of the ones that are the hits, right? I like Sunflower. I like Take What You Want. I like Die For Me. And there's a lot of other pretty good tracks on here, but despite this being one of the better Post Malone records, I still think it's only a meh record. I don't really care to revisit it anytime soon, and that's that. Coming in 83 is Dua Lipa's self-titled record from 2017. I kind of knew only one song going into this from this record, that being New Rules, and I like that song, and I like Dua Lipa's voice, and I was kind of hoping for more tracks with that sort of fun energy. And I got a little bit of that, but a lot of this record ended up being pretty formulaic pop music. And the more I kind of sit on it, the more I like it, but still, a lot of it kind of blends in and doesn't do that much interesting. I like tracks like Genesis and No Goodbyes, but once again, a lot of this, especially in the back half, is just kind of forgettable, hit or miss. Coming in 82, A Head Full of Dreams by Coldplay. This is their 2015 project. Don't have much to say that I haven't said before. Maybe it's grown on me a little bit, but not by much. Still overproduced, but it still has a handful of good tracks. Adventure of a Lifetime, Him for the Weekend, Fun, and even some tracks that have grown on me a bit more. Maybe Birds, and Everglow I still like, but still some annoying production on here. Still kind of Coldplay dropping off a little. What can I say? Coming in number 81 is Vultures 1, which is Kanye West's newest record from 2024. Although I did review Kanye back in my last video, this record was not out then, so this is my first time talking about it. And it's okay. It has its moments, but there's a lot on this record that I do not care for, I'll say that much. I mean, Hood Rat can be kind of annoying at times. A lot of this record can be, but there's still a lot of great production on here that makes it work. I like Burn. I think parts of Paid are okay. Keys to My Life can be okay sometimes. And then just production on other select tracks are good. But overall, this record is so-so. Coming in number 80 is The King of Limbs, which is Radiohead's 2011 record. I definitely understand why people don't like this record, and I'm not a huge fan either. Just not as good as their other records, and kind of only okay at times. The first half of this record uses a lot of turntable, glitchy drums and stuff that I actually really like. The second half feels a lot more like older Radiohead, and I feel like a lot of people like the second half more. But me personally, I prefer the first half, and in fact, I think I actually like the first 4 tracks, all of them, more than the best track on the second half. That includes tracks like Feral that are more of an interlude, just because I like the sort of glitchy thing that they have going on there, and that's probably my favorite part of this record, but it just doesn't quite hold up for me. And number 79, we're going with another Radiohead record, A Moon-Shaped Pool from 2016. This is an album I think I can respect a lot more than I enjoy. Maybe it'll grow on me over time. It probably will. It's definitely a more slower, ambient sort of album. And I like Burn the Witch. I like True Love Waits. And it's a great track. It's a great album to kind of listen to. But when it comes to thinking of stuff to pull from in this album, there's not much for me. And it might just not be my type of album. But it's still good, I think. Maybe just not for me. Coming in number 78 is Million Town by Frost. This is their 2006 record. A lot of people think this is their best record, and I don't see it. I don't see it personally. There's some decent moments on here, but there's also some issues. Hyperventilate's a great opener. It's a really fun instrumental. But then tracks like The Other Me and, to an extent, stuff like Snowman is just kind of okay. I don't like the production on this album throughout a lot of it. A lot of it feels kind of murky. I think Frost improves on this with their later records, but here it's just a little eh. And Million Town, which is the 23-minute track, 25, somewhere around there. It's a very long track, the longest I've listened to thus far. It works in moments, but as a full track, it just goes on a bit too long, right? If it was separated a bit more, then into individual tracks, I think I'd like those individual tracks a bit better. But as a whole, it's just a little long. That's Million Town. Coming in 77 is 1,000 Suns by Linkin Park. This is their 2010 record, and this is one of the few records that has not grown on me at all. It's almost grown, or it has grown in the other direction. It's grown worse on me. The tracks on here that work still work, that being Waiting for the End, Burning in the Skies, and the closer track. Those 3 still work for me. But a lot of the other tracks on here that aren't interludes or instrumentals feel like misses, like constantly. Linkin Park had a great concept here, and the interludes really work to kind of make that a thing. But half of this album's interludes, and the other half is songs, and those songs have to be good to back up what is in reality an album that's full of interludes and non-songs. And a lot of it just doesn't work. I don't like Blackout. I don't like Robot Boy. And this might turn some heads, but I don't like Iridescent. I don't like The Catalyst. I just don't like a lot that's on here. So it's going to fall here, unfortunately, which is sad because I think this project could have been something great, but I don't think it is. Coming in 76, Falling Satellites by Frost. This album is one that I respect more than I enjoy, once again. I think that's a common theme with a lot of 2016 albums. I like a lot of the first half of this album a good amount. I like Numbers. I like Power Block. I like Lights Out. But as you go on, a lot of it probably deserves a re-listen from me, because I think there's some more there that I'm not quite seeing yet, but there's just a lot of tracks that I don't quite care for, like Nice Day for It, or Hypoventilate, or British Wintertime, or really most of the stuff in the second half. I do like Lantern, but other than that, it just doesn't quite add up for me, and it only makes it an okay listen. Coming in number 75 is You're Not a Bad Person, It's Just a Bad World by Rare Americans. This is their 2022 record, and it's still kind of very neutral for me, kind of middle of the pack. The songs on here I like, but I don't take a lot away from them. I can remember these tracks, but they're not exceptional. They're not profoundly deep or anything. The production's fine. The lyrics are fine. Overall, it's just all pretty in the middle of the road. It's good. I like it. But that just might be me, on average, liking music more than I don't like it. So, okay record. Pretty fun. If you like Rare Americans' other stuff, you'll like this, I think. But it's kind of middle of the road. Coming in 74 is All We Know Is Falling by Paramore. This is their 2005 record. They kind of came out with a bang here, I feel like. A lot of the first 4 tracks are very good, but a lot of the production on here feels a bit dated, and a lot of the tracks in the second half don't quite live up to the first half. I think Conspiracy is really fun, but outside of that, it's only okay to good. Occasionally being a little bad, like with tracks like Whoa. But really, the first 4 tracks here are solid. All We Know is really fun. Pressure is great. My favorite here is Emergency. And then it goes on to Brighter, which is also really fun. But outside of that, it kind of falls apart. Or not falls apart, but just kind of blends in. It blends in. That's a better way of saying it. It's pretty good. Coming in number 73 is Paramore's self-titled record from 2013. A lot of people like this record more than I do, and I can see why. For whatever reason, the tracks on here just did not stick with me as much as I feel like they should have. I like a lot of the hits on here, like Still Into You and Ain't It Fun. I think One of Those Crazy Girls is also a fun track, and Future's pretty interesting. But a lot of it kind of fades into the background for me once again and is a bit forgettable. I think they're pretty decent tracks. Fast in My Car, Now, Grow Up. I mean, a lot of the tracks on here, once again, are pretty decent, but they also kind of fall flat for me for whatever reason. Going into number 72 is Sword and Sorcery by Rustage. This is an album that has kind of grown a bit more negative for me, and I think that's just me not liking the lyrics as much on some of this. I still think McGuire's voice is great and works well with this record and really makes it what it is, but it's good. It's good, and I can't say much else. Coming in 71 is Suck It and See by Arctic Monkeys. This is their 2011 record. This is still kind of the same opinion I had before, where it's a very nice vibe, a very nice sound that the band goes through on this record, but not a lot of the tracks are super exceptional. I still like Piledriver Waltz, Black Treacle's good still, and a lot of the tracks here have grown more on me, like She's Thunderstorms, Suck It and See, and just, other tracks, but overall, once again, it's good, but it's not exceptional for me. And that's kind of the theme with this sort of section of the rankings. Coming in 70s, Beer Bongs and Bentleys by Post Malone. This is 2018. I think it's his best record. A lot more memorable tracks on here. Fun production. Good lyrics, I guess. I like Better Now. I like, I mean, it's fruitless to name songs I like. I think it's pretty consistently good. I mean, of course, there's some more forgettable tracks, but the most consistently good Post Malone record. Um, I don't have much else to say. Coming in 69 is Helios by the Fray from 2014. I think I'm a bit of the Fray stan. This is probably a bit high for this record, but I like a lot of it. I think the more poppy records on here kind of miss sometimes, like Shadow and a Dancer, which has this weird sort of electronic thing to it, and Hurricane, which has this really annoying booming chorus. But there's tracks on here that work very well still. Hold My Hand, Love Don't Die, Wherever This Goes. The closing track is good. Um, Break Your Plans is pretty good. Like, I think there's a lot on here that I think it's a bit overlooked. But that being said, the phrase sort of trek into electronic ground they haven't done previous is a little mixed here. I can't deny that. Coming in 68 is Imploding the Mirage by The Killers. This is their 2020 record. I do like this record a decent amount. It kind of breaks The Killers out of this sort of slump they were in with the previous three records, and it has this new sort of sound to it that I like, and it's a lot more consistent than their other records. It's kind of a bit of a surprise. A lot of great tracks. I like Lightning Fields. I like My God. I like When the Dreams Run Dry. I like the title track, the opener. I mean, it's just a lot better than the previous three records. That being said, although I like a lot of the songs on here, there's some songs that don't work. Occasionally, Brandon Flowers' lyrics are still kind of like strange. That's still present on this record. And it still has its flaws, but overall, I enjoyed this record. This next one's going to be a bit of a hot take, I think, but in 67, I have Blonde by Frank Ocean from 2016. Once again, another record I respect a lot more than I enjoy. I like a good amount of tracks on here, like Ivy and Pink and White and Nights, but a lot of it kind of goes very slowly, similar to Moon-Shaped Pool, I think, by Radiohead, which I talked about earlier. It's just not really my type of album, I think. And with these slower albums, I think it's going to take time to grow on me. So if I make another ranking, perhaps it'll be higher. But right now, it's just kind of so-so for me. I enjoy the production on this album, but the individual songs are only okay. So, and it should also be said that this album has had the least time to grow on me, given it's the most recent album I've listened to. So it just hasn't had enough time to sit, perhaps. I don't know. But for now, it's just kind of okay. It's good. Coming in 66, Watch the Throne by Kanye West and Jay-Z. This is from 2011. This album has actually grown worse on me. It's one of the few that had. A lot of the tracks that I didn't care for, now I kind of actively dislike. I still think the tracks on here that are good. But a lot of the production just feels a bit worse for Kanye. I can't speak for Jay-Z as I haven't listened to any of his albums outside of this one. But for Kanye, the production just feels worse and a little annoying at times. It has its moments, but it's grown worse and doesn't feel as grand as it did before. Number 65 is AM by the Arctic Monkeys from 2013. It's a decent record. It's decent enough. At times it feels warm and welcoming, like with Fireside and Snap Out of It. But at other times it feels a bit cold, like with Do I Want to Know, which I still enjoy, but it's kind of grown worse on me. It just doesn't feel great. That being said, some other tracks have grown on me with this album, like Knee Socks and I Wanna Be Yours. But overall, everything kind of evens out. The good tracks and the bad tracks are pretty similar in amount and extremeness of quality. So it's a good record. Nothing super special in my opinion. I don't know why Apple put it in its top 100 albums, even though I guess I'm putting it in my top 100, but I've only listened to 105, so I don't know. Coming in 64 is Living Things by Linkin Park. This album's grown on me a decent amount. I like the electronic sound and the production on this album. A lot of the tracks feel better than they did before. There's still a couple tracks on here that are only okay, and I feel like that's when they're trying to be a bit heavier, like with Victimized. Um, but once again, a lot of the tracks on here work. They work well. It makes a pretty cohesive experience, very tied together. It all feels like it's off the same album. Um, the only issue is that there's not a lot of standalone great tracks. It's just kind of a great cohesive album as a whole, and not anything particularly great when you look track by track. Still good. Number 63, Radical Optimism by Dua Lipa, her newest project. I think I like this album a bit more than most people. A lot of the tracks on here I enjoy. I enjoy the pop production. I think there's a lot of fun moments on here, a lot of great hooks. Um, yeah, I think I like this more than most people, but that being said, it's still like not the greatest. Sometimes the tracks feel a bit vapid, but that's kind of few and far between here. I enjoy most of it. Coming in 62 is the Fray's self-titled album from 2009. This album, I'm a little, I don't know, this album I don't like as much as two other Fray projects, even though I feel like it's mostly considered to be the best Fray project. And I don't know why that is. It's just this project didn't live up to what I was expecting maybe a bit, at least compared to the other two albums that I enjoy more. There's still a great atmosphere to this album. Still some great songs on it. I still love You Found Me. Um, and I also enjoy a lot of the other tracks, like Say When and We Build and Then We Break, Where the Story Ends. I mean, a lot of great stuff on here, but there's also tracks that kind of go on a bit long, like Happiness, and tracks that feel a bit, I don't know, corny, like Syndicate. That's about all I have to say about this album. Number 61, Fever Dream by Of Monsters and Men from 2019. This album probably is the album that's grown on me the most. A lot of the tracks on here, looking back on them when I was ranking this, I'm like, this is a lot better than I was expecting, a lot more interesting, a lot better than I remember, I guess, rather. Um, I don't know why that is, why this album's grown on me so much. It's definitely still a stark difference from their previous two records, and it still kind of loses a bit of the magic that those had, but it's a lot better than I remember with a lot more memorable tracks. I like Wild Roses, I like Alligator, I like Row Row Row, Vulture Vulture, Wars, and just select parts of a lot of different songs on here that I haven't even mentioned just now. So yeah, it's a decent pop record. I like it. Next is number 60, Tell Me I'm Pretty, which is the 2015 project by Cage the Elephant. It's similar still to how I feel about Living Things by Linkin Park. It's a very good vibe, but not a lot of tracks that stand out particularly well. The reason it's ranked a couple spots above Living Things is because they don't have any of the tracks on this record that I feel don't fit as much or aren't as good like Victimized was for Living Things. This record feels a lot more cohesive in that way. Just track after track of pretty good to great. There's some great songs on here, I'll admit. Cold, 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 Trouble, um, Too Late to Say Goodbye. But once again, a lot of it just kind of blends into a mush of this sort of older sound that is fun to listen to, but not exceptionally great when you look track by track. Number 59, Pressure Machine, which is the 2021 project from The Killers. This one might be a grower. I don't care for it as much now, but I think I can care for it more later. I love the opener, West Hills. I think that's a great track. And I love In the Car Outside and Cody and Runaway Horses. I think Phoebe Bridgers has such a beautiful voice on that track and really in all of her music that I've heard. I like the sound that they go for on this record, this sort of kind of countryish, folkish sort of low-key thing. It's a bit of a left turn, but it's a welcomed one. And it makes for a pretty good listen that's occasionally a little forgettable with a lot of the tracks interspersed in here. But the good tracks make up for it a lot. Coming in 58 is James Boy and the Screw Loose Zoo from Our Americans from 2021. This is kind of the opposite of what I was saying earlier. It's an album that I like more than I respect, I think. There's a lot of tracks on here that are very corny, especially stuff like Mama's Bear that I actually don't like. But there's stuff on here that I like that is still corny and it's kind of hard to really find how I want to rank an album like this. I think there's genuinely good tracks on here that deserve attention, like Full Moon, Wayne's World 2, Baggage is a great pop track, but there's also just a lot of corny stuff on here, which is kind of Rare American's deal sometimes. Still like the record, but it is kind of hard to rank, I guess. Number 57 is Neon Pill by Cage the Elephant from 2024. This album is very recent, the most recent one that I've listened to. And a lot of the tracks on here are pretty good. It's similar to Tell Me I'm Pretty in the fact that there's a lot of great vibes on here, not a lot especially great though. I do like Float Into the Sky a lot. That's probably one of the great tracks on here. Some of the tracks near the end are a bit more boring to me, a bit more there's not a lot of switch up. It's a pretty predictable album, and it actually feels very similar to Social Cues, which they released 5 years prior. And I do prefer that record, which makes this one a little worse. 56, Everyday Life by Coldplay from 2019. I like this record a decent amount. It has some good styles on it. This nice left turn for Coldplay that I enjoy. But that being said, the first half of this album is much better than the second half. Guns is a good track on the second half, and Orphans too to an extent. But after that, it just kind of gets little, kind of loses some of the magic the first half had. I do like Sunrise and Churches and When I Need a Friend and Broken and Arabesque especially, which is my favorite track off this record. It just has a very unique sound that we haven't heard from Coldplay, and I don't think we'll ever hear again. But it's a welcome little project here. It's not a little project, but it's a welcome project. I like it, but it does fall apart a bit in the end, and some of the songs probably could have been longer, and some of the songs probably could have been cut. Number 55 is Yay by Kanye West. This one hasn't really grown on me, but it hasn't really grown sour either. I still like Ghost Town a lot. I think that's an excellent track. Some of the tracks individually, like No Mistakes, have grown on me a bit more. But there's still stuff like All Mine, which is just terrible in my opinion. So, still hit or miss on this record. Still pretty good. Maybe even great, but I can't rank it much higher than this. 54, Yeezus, also by Kanye West from 2013. This album has grown on me a lot since the first ranking. I like the industrial sound a lot more. A lot of the tracks in here feel a lot more memorable, a lot more enticing. And honestly, it's still kind of in the process of growing on me, so if I do another ranking, it might be even higher. I like this record a good amount. It's very enticing and interesting with the industrial beats and just very experimental and a bit of a left turn from Kanye here. Number 53. And number 53 is Minutes to Midnight by Linkin Park from 2007. This record, I have a similar opinion of it as I did before. I like a lot of the tracks on here, but they feel a little bit like they're trying to appeal to a mass audience, and it kind of loses the edge that Linkin Park had with their previous two records. I still like the tracks on here I liked. Still don't like the tracks on here I didn't like. Not much change here. Pretty good record. If you like Linkin Park or just new metal in general, it's worth a listen, but it's nothing super special for me. Number 36, Day and Age by Frost from 2021. This album was ranked a lot lower originally, but I kind of gave it another look through, and it grew on me a lot in that look through. There's just a lot on here that works, and that's why I feel like I might be missing stuff on Falling Satellites. I mean, track after track, Frost does a pretty good job here. It has some of the same issues that the other projects have, like with some songs just going on too long. But overall, it's solid. I like the title track, even if it is a bit long. I like Skywards. I like the closer. I think like the 3-minute outro to Kill the Orchestra is super amazing. But yeah, great, fun neo-prog record to listen to. A lot of interesting themes. And I like the spoken word, The Boy Who Stood Still. I'll say that also. Interesting track, but good. Number 51, Hot Fuss by The Killers. Um, it's a very iconic record, I think. It has the iconic track Mr. Brightside, which I feel like everyone's heard. But outside of that, it only gets worse. There's a lot of great tracks at the beginning here, like Smile Like You Mean It and Jenny Was a Friend of Mine. I like both those tracks. I like Change Your Mind. I like Somebody Told Me. All the things that I've done. Um, and if you count glamorous indie rock and roll, then that's also a good track. But there's a lot of dated production choices on here. The electronic elements in this album are just incredibly dated. It's almost absurd. Um, it takes away from a lot of the tracks, I feel like, and makes some of the middle half and latter half of this album a bit to listen through, such as Andy, You're a Star, and Listen, Natalie, and On Top. Believe Me, Natalie, not Listen, Natalie. You get the point. Some outdated stuff on here, but it's pretty good. Number 50 is In Rainbows by Radiohead from 2007. This is another hot take, I think. This album I did not care for as much as I think a lot of people did. A lot of great tracks on here still, like Reckoner and 15 Step and Weird Fishes, and just a lot of the tracks most people like. But a lot of the tracks also didn't do much for me here, like The Closer and like House of Cards, and just some of the stuff in the middle, Faust Arp. And I'll also say that some of the tracks that people love didn't grow on me so much, and I don't care for as much, like Body Snatchers. It just didn't do a lot for me, which is fine. I can't like every record. Still think it's great, though, just not as good as a lot of people say it is. Coming in 49 is Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. This one might also be a hot take for all I know. I do like Channel Orange a good amount, a lot more than I liked Blonde. I think the latter half of this album is way better than the first half. Thinking About You is a great song, but outside of that, the first half kind of is filled with okay to good songs. But once you hit like Crack Rock and Pyramids and Lost and Monks and Pink Matter and Forrest Gump and Bad Religion, that's like a great stretch. I don't think I got the order right, but that's a great stretch of tracks in the second half that's really enjoyable to go through. And I like the sort of theme of this album, just being like flicking through a radio, looking at the different channels. It's a good record. I like this record a good amount. On to 48 is Rare American's self-titled record from 2018. It still has that punch that I like, that you don't really get with any other Rare Americans record. But it has maybe grown a bit worse in some areas as the production feels a bit worse and the lyrics occasionally are worse too. It's still a decent record, not much new to say about it. I still like Cats, Dogs, and Rats a lot. Balmoral Hotel might be one of my favorites off this now. Yeah, that's kind of it. Coming in number 47 is The Life of Pablo by Kanye West in 2016. This album's grown on me quite a bit. I like the chaotic energy of this album still, and a lot more of the tracks stand out as good. Some tracks I didn't really care for before kind of coming back and resurfacing, such as No More Parties in LA, and then the tracks I did like before just kind of getting better, like Wolves and St. Pablo and Father Stretch My Hands Part 1. Still a good record, still not my favorite though. Next in 46 is Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by Arctic Monkeys from 2018. I like the direction they went for on this record still. Some of the tracks don't work, but for the most part they do. And there's some excellent tracks on here like American Sports and 4 out of 5. That's about all I have to say that I didn't really say before. Once again, great sort of lounge, spacey record they have here. Nice direction. That's about it. And number 45 is Scars and Stories by the Fray from 2012. Once again, I might be overrating some of these Fray records, but I just think this one's solid. A lot of the tracks on here work well once again, and there's even some great ones like 1961 and Munich and Heartbeat. I like the direction they went with this one, being a bit more, not folky, but just a bit more stripped back, I feel, a bit more acoustic of a record. It's good. Coming in 44 is Amnesiac by Radiohead from 2001. I know this is pretty much a collection of B-sides from Kid, but I mean, it's still just a great record, because Kid is a great record. I like the electronic stuff they have on here. A lot of it's really fun. It's not as good as Kid A. There's some stuff on here that's a bit more forgettable, like some of the more skit tracks, like Hunting Bears and Pulk Pull, Revolving Doors, and even some actual tracks like Dollars and Cents don't really do anything for me. But there's still good stuff on here, like Pyramid Song, Life in a Glass House, Spinning Plates, the opener, just other tracks too, Knives Out, yeah. Fun electronic album here. 43 is going to be How to Save a Life by the Fray from 2005. It's the most consistent The Fray record, but it might also be the worst produced, with tracks like Heaven Forbid and Fall Away that aren't quite as good. But once again, there is a lot more good tracks on here, like the first four, that being She Is, Over My Head, How to Save a Life, and All at Once. And there's even good tracks in the latter half, like Vienna, Trust Me, Little House. Overall, I enjoy this record a lot and think it's consistent and has that nice sort of cozy rock feel that was kind of common in the 2000s. Coming in 42 is Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa from 2020. And this is a great pop record. A lot of the tracks on here work really well, and I think it's Dua Lipa's greatest, and I think it's really good. There are a couple tracks here that don't quite work as well, like Good in Bed, and even the great tracks, sometimes it's just... The fact of the matter is, it's hard to really relate deeply with tracks that are meant to be big hits. And although these are good big hits, they're big hits for a reason, and the production's fun, and the lyrics are fun, and it's not super bad. It's just hard to really get deep into this record. Once again, great tracks. Not much else to say. Number 41 is Ghost Stories by Coldplay from 2014. I still like the dream pop they went for here. I think a lot of the tracks are good. I think this album's massively underrated. I still love Oceans and Midnight and Ink, but even the tracks I didn't care for as much are growing on me more, like Oh and like Always in Your Head. Always in My Head, and like Magic. Overall, I think it's really consistent, and it has a fun, nice sound that Coldplay hasn't experimented with before on here. So, I like it. 41. And number 40 is Brand New Eyes by Paramore from 2009. This has a lot of the same punk pop that they were doing before. It's still done very well. The opening four are really strong. I love Careful and Ignorance and Playing God. But when you get in the latter half, I feel like it gets slightly weaker. Some more forgettable tracks. I still think a lot of it's good, though. I love, what is it? Brick by Boring Brick. All I Wanted. But yeah, once again, some stuff in the middle here that doesn't quite live up to the rest of the album. I think if it was all as good as the tracks I've previously mentioned, it would be a lot higher. Unfortunately, it's going to fall here, though. And number 39 is Sam's Town by The Killers from 2006. This is definitely my favorite Killers record because it has a lot of the same elements that Hot Fuss had, except there's a bit of a twist on it. It has a bit more rock and a little less electronic. And even the electronic on here is not as dated as it was in Hot Fuss. Really, a lot of this record is just a lot better overall. I like a lot of the first half. Sam's Town, Read My Mind, Bones, Bling. I mean, a lot of great tracks. When you get in the second half, it gets a little more forgettable, and there's some worse tracks, which is why this isn't incredibly high. Very similar to how Brand New Eyes was, where some great tracks, some more forgettable ones. Overall, a good, solid, great even record. Next is going to be number 38. That's The New Abnormal by The Strokes from 2020. This one has grown on me a lot since my last ranking. It's still my least favorite Strokes record, but not by as much. A lot of the tracks on here are starting to make sense more and more. Eternal Summer's grown on me so much. I love that track now. I love Selfless and Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus and Sundays and really most of the stuff on here I, at the very least like. So yeah, I think we're really entering the territory of great albums and starting off with The New Abnormal. Next is 37, The College Dropout by Kanye West from 2004. Iconic record, obviously. I still don't like it as much as a lot of other people. I still think there's tracks on here that aren't great, and it's not as consistent as people like to think it is. But the start of the album and the end of the album is still incredibly good. It's just the middle part that's a bit so-so with tracks like School Spirit and Breathe In, Breathe Out. But, I mean, a lot of tracks in here that I love. I still love Two Words, Family Business, Through the Wire, and All Falls Down, and Spaceship. A lot of good tracks on here. Number 36 is going to be Come Down Machine by The Strokes from 2013. Still super consistent and fun. Songs like 50-50 don't quite hold up, but overall, super underrated. It has a really fun 80s vibe to it that I love that The Strokes took this direction. Not much else to say that I haven't said before. Coming in number 35 is This It by The Strokes from 2001. I'm now realizing how many Strokes records I'm really knocking off here, but Is This It is good. I wish I could connect to it just a bit more. I recognize that the individual tracks are great, but when I look back on it, it doesn't quite hit as much as some of their other works and some works from other artists. But looking track by track, it's excellent. Not really any bad tracks on here. Even my least favorite ones, like Take It or Leave It, are still good. Very good tracks, even. So I enjoy this record a lot. Maybe it'll move up in the future. It has a very fun indie garage rock revival sound. Very influential, obviously. Next, 34, Late Registration by Kanye West from 2005. I hold Late Registration and The College Dropout in a very similar sort of area. Late Registration, I'm saying, is slightly better here just because I think it's a bit more consistent with the tracks, and the tracks on here are a bit better. Really, the only tracks on here that I don't like as much are more in the later half, with tracks like Gone and Late, that are just okay, still good. But yeah, I do like this record a lot still. Great production, a lot of great tracks on here. Has grown on me more. Next, in 33, is Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not by the Arctic Monkeys, 2006. Maybe this one's grown on me a little worse, a little more sour, but I still think it's a great record. A lot of fun switch-ups, very energetic, high-energy album with just a lot of fun stuff in it. Once again, it holds that nice indie garage rock revival sound like Is This It had, except this one's a lot more explosive and a lot more energetic, like I just said. Number 32, 808s and Heartbreaks by Kanye West from 2008. I like the direction that Kanye went here. A lot of great tracks here once again. I think it's more consistent than the previous two that I was just talking about, and that's why it's a bit higher. But maybe it doesn't reach the same highs as the other two did. I still like Heartless a lot, and I do like RoboCop and Paranoid, which might be my favorite off this record now. But there's not as much that, say, Late Registration had that I'm crazy about. But it's just more consistent. Number 31 is Cage the Elephant's self-titled album from 2009. I like the rough indie rock sound they have here, but it's not completely consistent like a lot of Cage the Elephant records. It's very rough around the edges, which works at times and doesn't work at other times, like with Backstabbing Betty and other tracks like it. But yeah, great record, very fun to listen to, very energetic. I would give it a listen if you like indie rock. Coming in number 30 is Rare Americans 2 by Rare Americans from 2021. I still like this record a lot, but it kind of maybe grew a bit worse on me for a lot of the reasons that Rare Americans' third project, Jamesy Boy, grew worse on me. It feels a bit cornier than it did before. It's still really consistent and has really nice fun energy to it, but it's maybe slightly worse just because a lot of the tracks feel a bit cornier, like Hullabaloo and Brittle Bones Nicky, just growing slightly worse. It's still a great record, but just doesn't have the enjoyment that I had before. Coming at 29 is First Impressions of Earth by The Strokes from 2006. I like this record a lot still, maybe more than some other people. I still think the first 3-4 tracks are still the best on the record, and it gets a little inconsistent near the latter half. But overall, I still think it's great. Very fun to listen through, very energetic. With a lot of great tracks I feel like people overlook, like Electricity Scape, for example. Coming in number 28, Hell to the Thief by Radiohead from 2003. I like the more abrasive rock sound that they came in with this record, following records like Amnesiac and Kid A, which were a lot more electronic and ambient. It really packs a punch in this record and is really fun to listen to. A lot of interesting themes, great tracks, unique concepts, which Radiohead does a lot. And I think this worked. I think this album worked really well. Super fun to listen to. I'd definitely give it a listen. 27, Parachutes by Coldplay from 2000. Um, yeah, I still love the warm feeling this album has. Very cozy. A lot of the tracks I didn't like before that I thought were maybe a bit boring grew on me, like We Never Change and Sparks. And that's why I think part of the reason is that I'll grow more on Blonde and the Moonshaped Pool in the future is because Parachutes, maybe I wasn't a bit crazy about it at first. Of course, it was higher on the list last time than, say, Blonde is or Moonshaped Pool is now, but it's definitely grown on me even though I've already liked it. Coming in number 26 is Beneath the Skin by Monsters and Men in year 2015. Similar feelings, very consistent record, I think. It's grown on me more. Uh, I just love the magical folk feeling that of Monsters and Men has with their records, especially this one, and especially the one that came before it that we'll talk about a bit later. Just really consistent. Maybe in the latter half it gets a bit worse, but still fun and charming. Very charming. Coming in 25th is Cage of the Elephants Social Cues from 2019. I like the abrasiveness of this album and some of the darker themes it touches on. I think it's pretty consistently great. And some of the slower tracks are a bit weaker, but are still pretty solid, like Goodbye. Overall, really great album. Not much else to say about it. Next is 24, Kids See Ghost by Kids See Ghost, Kid Cudi, and Kanye West. Um, Once again, not much to say that I haven't said before. Great hip hop record. A good amount of experimentalness that really makes a lot of these tracks interesting, and a lot of makes them stand the test of time a bit, I guess. I like this record a lot. It's really great. Number 23, This Is Why by Paramore from 2023. I do like this record a lot. It kind of has this new age punk sort of thing that Paramore goes for, and I think it works really well on most of the tracks. Occasionally there's weaker spots, but those are few and far between, and even the weaker spots are still pretty good, such as Big Man Little Dignity and Liar, and Thick Skull to an extent. But I love a lot of the tracks on here. I can't stop listening to them. Number 22, X and Y by Coldplay from 2005. This album I like more and more the longer it's in my brain. Honestly, it's grown on me a ton, and it was already pretty high, and of pretty high regard in my eyes. I just love the spaciness. I think it's super consistent. It's really fun. It's like a journey through space, and it's just so grand at times and so intimate at other times. Honestly, I think it works incredibly well, and I'm glad that Coldplay made this project. Coming in 21, Favorite Worst Nightmare by Arctic Monkeys from 2007. This one has grown a bit sour on me, and a lot of that is because of the latter half just being weaker. It's hard to argue that it isn't. In my eyes, at least, there's just some weaker tracks. Not a lot of bad tracks. The Bad Thing is a bad track, but the rest of them are only okay. The first half is great, though, but the inconsistency is really kind of coming up to the front of my brain when I think about this album, and it makes me put it lower than I did before. Coming in 20, Graduation by Kanye West, 2007. Influential record, great record, iconic, a lot of iconic tracks on here. The tracks I like are just amazing. Once again, though, there's just some tracks on here I don't care for, and stuff like Drunken Hot Girls and Barry Bonds, and even some tracks that other people like Big Brother and The Glory. I just can't get down with those tracks a lot, so it is a bit of a mixed experience for me. But the good parts do outweigh the bad parts by quite a bit, and it makes it a really great record still. Number 19, Riot by Paramore, 2007. This is just an amazing, very iconic pop-punk record. Everyone's heard Misery Business. A lot of people have heard Crush, Crush, Crush. That's What You Get. All of those being great tracks. But even the deeper cuts on this thing work really well, like the opener, and Fences, and Born for This, and Let the Flames Begin, When It Rains. I mean, track after track, this is solid. Miracle's a bit weak. But outside of that, I honestly really like every track on here. Really fun pop punk record. Can't recommend it enough to people who like pop punk. 18, Experiments in Mass Appeal by Frost. I think this is Frost's best record by quite a margin. It still sometimes goes on a bit long, like in the closer, Wonderland. I personally prefer the remixed, remastered version, which is only 5 minutes long as opposed to 15 minutes, and it kind of just has that first 5 minutes and cuts out the rest, because those last 10 minutes of the original song are the weakest point of the entire album. I love those first 5 minutes of Wonderland, though, along with Pocket Sun, Saline, Dear Dead Days, Falling Down, Toys. I mean, there's no limit of good tracks on here. There's no bad tracks, I should say. Everything has its moments, even though sometimes it goes on a bit long, like with the opener and title track, which is a bit slow at times and a bit dull. But it picks up in the choruses, and I mean, once you get to the third track, Pocket Sun, it really is just a stretch of really good tracks for a while, and it's a great record, great neo-prog. Love it. Number 17, Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park from the year 2000. Very iconic. I still love this album. A lot of great tracks, not really any bad ones. Has a very fun new metal sound. Can't complain about much here. Not much else to say, though. Still good. Hasn't grown on me a ton. Hasn't gone sour on me a ton. Still fun new metal that is very much feels like its time, but doesn't feel dated. It's almost just like a nostalgic musical feeling that I like. I like this record a lot. Number 16, The Bends by Radiohead from 1995. This is a really solid rock record. It followed up Pablo Honey, and I mean, it just feels so much better, from the grandness of the opener, Planet Telex, to the closer, which is my favorite, Street Spirit. I love that song. It's just so fitting for a closer and really wraps up that album so nicely. And then there's the middle of this album, which is filled with a bunch of great tracks, like the title track, Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry, Bones, and other tracks too, like Iron Lung. I mean, I like a lot of this album. There's not a lot of weaker tracks on here. I mean, I don't like Sulk or Black Star as much, but they're still good tracks. And this kind of opening the experimental gates for Radiohead, and I love that. I love that. Great record. Can't recommend it enough to rock fans. Number 15, My Head is an Animal by Of Monsters and Men from 2012. Great record, very magical and charming, like how I described the last Of Monsters and Men record on this list. This one, however, just has more of that charm, feels more magical and more mystical. I love a lot of the tracks on here. If it wasn't for Sloom, I think this would be like better in every way than Beneath the Skin. But Sloom's a bit of a weaker track. The rest on here, though, is just so great for folk, pop, rock, whatever you want to call it. Little Talks, King and Lionheart, Dirty Paws, Mountain Sound, Lake House, Yellow Light, From Finner. I mean, there's no real bad tracks on here outside of Sloom. Everything else is just great and really fun to listen to and really innovative, I think. It's great. Number 14, Room on Fire by The Strokes from 2003. This record might have worsened on me a tiny bit for a similar reason that Favorite Worst Nightmare did. Some of the middle half to latter half feels a bit weaker, but still not bad. It's still good. And there's no bad tracks on this thing. Even my least favorite ones, like Under Control and The Way It Is, are still good. But, I mean, the first four here are incredibly solid, from Whatever Happened, Reptilia, 1251, and Automatic Stop. I love the closer, that being I Can't Win. I love Between Love and Hate. I love Meet Me in the Bathroom. I mean, very fun indie garage rock revival, kind of like Is This It? Very similar to Is This It? Although I think this kind of mastered the sounds that the Strokes were going for in that record. So it's going to be up here at number 14. And number 13 is going to be The Hunting Party by Linkin Park, 2014. I still love this record a lot. It's grown on me even more. Just super fun, heavy rock, new metal sounds, very consistent. I don't like War, but outside of that, this is just fun through and through, very energetic and powerful. From the opener, Keys to the Kingdom, to the closer, Line in the Sand, it's just full of energy. Guilty All the Same, All for Nothing, even the interludes here, the summoning and drawbar, are both interesting to listen to. And I just think it's super consistent and incredibly overlooked. Listen to this record, please. Coming in number 12 is Melophobia by Cage the Elephant from 2013. I love this record still, but it still has the same flaws it had before. It's not the most consistent record, but the great tracks on the song are like amazing. It's just a shame it couldn't be more consistent. I love Halo, I love Spiderhead, I love Hypocrite, I love Cigarette Daydreams, but tracks like Teeth and It's Not Forever and Black Widow aren't horrible, but they're definitely not as good. Anyway, it's a great record still. Very fun indie rock from Cage the Elephant here. On to number 11. Number 11, Kid A by Radiohead from the year 2000. This was definitely a left turn from OK Computer, but a welcome one. A lot of great tracks on here. I love the electronics. A lot of the tracks on here are very good. Even the ones I don't care for as much are still great. I can't really pick a least favorite track. It feels like I'd be doing a disservice. I guess I can just pick my favorites, that being the title track, Everything in Its Right Place, Idiotech, In Limbo, and Motion Picture Soundtrack. I'll just name those 5. Amazing tracks. And the rest are amazing too, but I can't recommend it enough. Anyone who likes electronic music, anyone who likes rock music, or anything experimental, it's just a great all-around record that I'd recommend anyone listen to. Number 10, breaking into the top 10, After Laughter by Paramore, 2017. This is such a left turn for Paramore, and it's one of the only Paramore records that really leans pop more than punk. You could argue their self-titled did as well, but this one especially is very poppy and very clean sounding. I do think it's a very big left turn, but I think it's a very good one. I think it's a great album. Consistent. No bad tracks. Some people don't like tracks like No Friend. I personally find them super enjoyable. And I love the darker messages behind some of these cheery tracks, and a lot of the hooks are great, and the production's great. Love it. Love this record. Number 9, Tyranny by the Voidz, 2014. This is a great record. I love how abrasive and dark and almost hard to listen to this record is, just in terms of production and some of the guitars. Very industrial at times. Very much different from their other record, which we'll get to later. I love this record. Very consistent, very experimental. From Take Me in Your Army to Crunch Punch, Mutually Assured Destruction, Human Sadness is amazing. And even the latter half, you have songs like Nintendo Blood and Dare I Care, and even Off to War, which I think are great. The worst songs on this track, like Business Dog, aren't great. Business Dog's not great, but it's made up for by literally every other track being pretty amazing. Johann von Bronx is only okay, maybe, but even then, it's like you have so many to balance that out. Father Electricity's amazing. It's a great record. Super fun and experimental, and has so many little twists and turns and things you notice every time you listen to it. Can't get enough of it. Number 8, A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay, 2002. This record's grown on me. It's just more consistent the more I look at it. I love the atmosphere the song has. I love the themes. Politics great. In My Place is great. The Scientist Clocks. Amsterdam's grown on me a ton. I mean, I don't think there's really any bad tracks on here. Green Eyes is the only one that's maybe okay. But, I mean, it's just super fun to listen through. Very cohesive and wraps itself up very nicely. And number 7, Angles by The Strokes from 2011. I still love this record. It's actually grown on me more than Room on Fire, just mostly because I feel it's more consistent, maybe. It definitely doesn't feel as cohesive. It's just kind of a lot of scattered tracks that have kind of a little bit of binding together, but still a bit scattered. That being said, all the tracks on here are pretty great. Even the worst one, which might be Two Kinds of Happiness, is still a really good song in my opinion. I love everything on here. My favorite being Undercover of Darkness, with Games being a close second. Very sort of 80s vibes. I'd almost say it's similar to After Laughter in that it was a very big left turn and dips into something different. For After Laughter is more pop. For this, it's more experimental electronic sounds that I just really dig. Coming in 6 is Meteora by Linkin Park, 2003? right? 2003, yes. Love Meteora, very consistent new metal record. Not a bad track on here. I can't recommend it enough. I like it more than Hybrid Theory because I think it kind of really cemented this sound for Linkin Park. And I think it's so consistent and fun. And most of the songs on here range from great to amazing. There's no shortage of good tracks. Even the ones that people don't like as much, that I don't like as much, are still great. Number 5, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West, 2010. Very iconic, obviously. No bad tracks except for arguably Blame Game, but most of the Blame Game stuff that I don't like is just kind of the skit thing at the end. Maybe some tracks go on a bit long, like So Appalled, but really everything here is pretty great. Very iconic, very well produced, great sort of concept and themes for this album. Can't get enough of it. Definitely my favorite Kanye record. Love it. Number 4, OK Computer by Radiohead, 1997. This record is kind of a step forward from the Bends in terms of experimentalness and has a really fun sound to it that stays interesting even if some of the tracks are a bit slower, especially near the latter half, like The Tourist and Lucky and Climbing Up Your Walls. Although tracks like that are slower, they're still super interesting and enticing for the entire runtime. And then there's more energetic tracks like Paranoid Android and Electioneering that just have a punch to them. I mean, there's nothing really bad on this album. A lot of it's iconic, a lot of it's well produced, a lot of it's really great. Love it. Number 3, Virtue by the Voidz, 2018. This is a different record from Tyranny in a lot of ways. It's a lot more cheery, a lot more clean. It has its moments of darkness, no doubt, but very, very stylistically different. And I love it. It has so many different sounds on it, yet it all ties together pretty well, unlike something like Angles. It has cheery sounding songs at least, from Leave It in My Dreams and Permanent High School, to much darker sounds in songs like Black Hole and Where We Were, which might be the worst track on this record, but even then it has its moments. And I mean, really, I could just list off the entire track list when we're talking about songs I like. Leave It in My Dreams, Pyramid of Bones, Permanent High School, Wink, Think Before You Drink. My Friend the Walls. There's no shortage. Love this record. So many different sounds on it. It stays so interesting and good. So I'll leave it at that. Number 2, Humbug by the Arctic Monkeys, 2009. I still love this record and how dark it can be sometimes. I love the sound it has. The only reason it's losing one spot is just because maybe it's aged a bit worse. Some lyrics aren't great. Although every track I like a lot, it's just some individual moments they mess up a bit more than the number 1 spot. Still love this record though. Finally, in number 1, my favorite album that I've listened to, which might change, but the number 1 spot probably changes by the day. But it's, for now, Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends by Coldplay, 2008. This one originally got second last time to Humbug, but I moved it up to first just because I feel it might be a bit more consistent. The worst track on here, Lost, is still pretty good, even if it is just a bit reliant on it being a bit poppier and a bit more of a hit. Even then, I still like it a lot. And all the other tracks in here I like a lot too. And the lyrics don't falter as much as they do on Humbug. I think they're a lot more consistent. This isn't a 10 out of 10 album by any means, but it's not far from it. I like Cemeteries of London. I like Violet Hill, Viva La Vida. I love Strawberry Swing, Death and All His Friends, 42, Lovers in Japan. I mean, Yes, especially. I love Yes. There's really no bad tracks on here. And with that, that's the ranking of all 105 albums from 20 different artists. From this point forward, I'm going to be listening to individual albums rather than full artist discographies. So if I do another ranking, it'll be a bit more scattered and diverse in terms of artists. But I can't wait to listen to more albums. Thank you for listening to this video and watching my ranking. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I hope you know that my opinion's not gospel. It's just an opinion. And that being said, have a good one.